Hello everyone, hope all of you are safe and healthy. Welcome to IS Baba's Rapid Revision Series for Prelims 2021. This is session 25 and day 33, and the topics we have are nanotechnology, biodiversity and robotics. So these are the hot topics we are going to discuss: the elephant corridors for the first, and then xenobots and stem cells, then gold nanoparticles and their applications, then robotic surgery, the benefits of them, then silver antimony telluride and the properties of it, and peatlands, and then nanourea liquid produced by IFFCO, and then nanomyceles, then nanobodies or the nano antibodies and gravitational waves. Now, coming to first one, elephant corridors. Friends, why was it in news? Because in October 2020, Supreme Court had upheld the Tamil Nadu government's authority to notify an elephant corridor. And even in Odisha, it was in news because the National Green Tribunal, it had also given the power to the government of Odisha to demark elephant corridors. So in this context, whatever conservation efforts we are taking up towards elephants become important. So we will begin with the IUCN status. So IUCN gives endangered status for elephants, and Wildlife Protection Act 1972, it keeps elephants in the Schedule 1. So there is a strict ban of hunting of elephants in India. And then Conservation of Migratory Species, or the CMS, or the Bone Convention, it puts elephant in the Appendix 1. So Appendix 1 means here the threatened migratory species category, and it has one more appendix in the CMS, it is Appendix 2. So the species mentioned in Appendix 2 are those animals which are having international concerns. So these two appendix we will remember in the Bone Convention, and we will move on. And then Wildlife Trust of India and Ministry of Environment's Project Elephant has identified 101 elephant corridors. So there are three types of elephant corridors in India. They are Priority 1, Priority 2 and Priority 3. So we will remember as many elephant corridors as possible before going to prelims. And then Hathi Mera Saathi program was also launched by the Ministry of Environment and Wildlife Trust of India. Friends, we know that Wildlife Trust of India is a non-governmental organization working towards wildlife conservation in India. And then Project Elephant, a centrally sponsored scheme, was also launched in 1992. And moreover, Union Government's Elephant Task Force also came up in 2010. And more about elephants conservation, the Monitoring of Illegal Killing of Elephants program, or the MIKE program, was started in South Asia in 2003, and this was started in the Conference of Parties Resolution of CITES. So we can say that MIKE is a program of CITES. So we have discussed CITES in the last class itself, and now there are some of the MIKE sites in India which are important. They are, first one, Chirangripu and Dihing Patkai of Assam. So in this map we can find Chirangripu here and Dihing Patkai here. So Chirangripu is in the west of Assam and Dihing Patkai is in the east. And then we have Eastern Duars in West Bengal. So Eastern Duars will come very next to Chirangripu itself. So it is easy to locate them in the map very next to the Chirangripu. Then Deomali of Arunachal Pradesh. So Deomali comes below Dihing Patkai. So once again this is also easy to locate in the map. And then Garo Hills, we know that Kasi Garo Jaintia Hills, they are in Meghalaya, and yes, obviously Garo Hills MIKE site will be in Meghalaya. And then Mayurbhanj, we know Mayurbhanj is a famous city for iron ore, so that is in Odisha. Then Mysore, the Tiger of Mysore, once again Karnataka. Then Nilgiri, there is no need to memorize once again, it is automatically in Tamil Nadu. Then Shivalik, Shivalik Hills are most probably in Uttarakhand. Once again, Shivalik MIKE site will be in Uttarakhand. And Wayanad Lake, the famous lake, it is in Kerala, and Wayanad MIKE site will also be in Kerala. So these are some of the MIKE sites we will remember and move on. Then Elephant 8 Ministerial Conference 2011 was started in the same year, and in this conference the Hathi Mera Saathi program was launched. And in this context, those Elephant 8 members will become important. So who are the member countries of Elephant 8 Ministerial Conference? They are Kenya, Sri Lanka, Botswana, Republic of Congo, Tanzania, Indonesia, Thailand and India. So we have Asian and African nations together. So this is all about elephant corridors. Coming to next. Xenobots and stem cells. So why was it in news, friends? Because scientists in United States have created world's first living robots named Xenobots. So how are they prepared, friends? They are prepared from the stem cells of Xenopus laevius, an African frog. So they took up the stem cells of this frog and they cultivated a robot. So what are stem cells? Those are premature cells which have the capability of differentiating into specific tissues. Yes, we know that, we studied it in biology. And then moving to next. So these scientists, they took up skin cells of the frog and they placed it as designed here. So in the figure, the green cells or the green blocks, they depict the skin cells of the frog. And then they took the heart cells and they placed it below them. So this is how the robots were designed. And they took up RNA of the frog cells and they used them as memory cells or temporary memory cells. So when a coagulation of all these, when they were put in an enzyme containing nutrients and minerals, there became a robot or it became a cellular mass-like structure as shown in this figure. So now what happens, friends? This skin cell, it is providing rigidity for the robot, and these red cells are heart cells. They are pumping continuously and they are giving locomotive effect. So these heart cells, they help in moving, then picking up, loading, unloading and other activities of robot. Then RNA is acting as memory cell. So this RNA will receive short commands and it will execute. So now what are the abilities of this Xenobot? It is to move a target or to move towards a target. So locomotive and mobilization ability it has. But as they are too minute in nature, they can pick up or they can load, they can unload only minute particles. So they can pick up micro payloads. And moreover, they have the ability to heal themselves after being cut. So we know that they are living cells, so they can reproduce on their own. So that is why if there are any aberrations that occur in the course of the journey, they will heal themselves. Yes, friends. So this is all about Xenobot and stem cells. Now coming to application, they are applied in endoscopy. So as they are very minute in nature, they can be sent through alimentary canal, veins and other body parts, and they can be used for endoscopy, taking the videograph of the internal organs. And then targeted delivery of drugs. So we can tie the drug to these limbs and we can send them into the body and we can ensure that the drug is delivered to the exact target. And gathering microplastics in oceans. So as they are minute, they have the capability to take minute particles and they can purify the oceans as well. And then extracting radioactive contaminants. Friends, we know that it is very dangerous for humans to touch these radioactive elements. But these Xenobots, they can pick up even minute radioactive contaminants and they can handle them carefully. Gold nanoparticles. Why was it in news, friends? Because National Center for Polar and Oceanic Research conducted an experiment where Antarctic cyclo-tolerant bacteria biosynthesized gold nanoparticles active against sulfate-reducing bacteria. So what are cyclo-tolerant bacteria? Those are bacteria which can tolerate extreme cold. And these bacteria, they produced gold nanoparticles which are active against sulfate-reducing bacteria. So now, how these cyclo-tolerant bacteria, they produced gold nanoparticles? Friends, we know that nanoparticles can be produced only in intense cold environment. But bacteria will die if they are put into such a cold environment. But these cyclo-tolerant bacteria, they survived in such a cold environment and they produced the gold nanoparticles. So how did they produce? So we took aurum sulfate solution or AuSO4 and we put this bacteria into the solution. So now what happened is that in the solution we have aurum and sulfate ions, and bacteria wants these aurum ions, Au plus ions, for the survival as micronutrients. So it absorbs aurum ions, and these aurum ions are dangerous for the bacteria. So that is why the bacteria converts Rm ions into Rm molecules. So now gold molecules are being prepared inside the bacteria. Now this bacteria, it consumes enough gold and then it excretes the excess of gold. How it excretes, friends? It deposits these gold molecules around the tiny pores which has throughout its body. So now what happens after 2 to 3 days, if we take out this bacteria, around the pores we will be having these small gold nodules or the nanoparticles of gold. So this is how gold nanoparticles are synthesized. Now why these gold nanoparticles are reactive against these sulfate reducing bacteria? So it is that for our astonishment we passed these gold nanoparticles into these sulfate reducing bacteria. So these are gold nanoparticles, these are passed into the sulfate reducing bacteria. So for our astonishment it was that these gold nanoparticles, they stuck to the DNA of these bacteria, thereby coagulating the DNA and thus leading to the damage and death of the DNA. So it was a breakthrough. We found that these gold nanoparticles, they were acting as antibodies or the antibiotics to these sulfate reducing bacteria. So these breakthroughs were a great invention from the National Center for Polar and Oceanic Research. Yes friends. So in this context we will study the application of gold nanoparticles. So where are the gold nanoparticles used, friends? They are used in finding purity of a substance, then treating of cancer, then targeted drug delivery, then solar cells and NOMFETs. So briefly in 2 minutes we will discuss how these are being produced. Friends, we know that gold is a large atom. Yes friends, and the electrons that are present in the outermost orbit, they are free from the force of this nucleus. So they are loosely tied to the nucleus of the gold atom. So now what happens? When we pass a light beam to this gold nanoparticle, the electrons, they start bouncing. So this bounce is called the plasmon resonance. So there will be a resonance or a synchronized wave that is being created. And now bring one more particle, one more molecule and attach to this gold. I will bring potassium. So now what happens is that this potassium nucleus, this will hold these electrons to some extent, and now this looseness will be reduced, and now these electrons are not loose to that extent when the gold was independent, when the gold atom was independent. Now if I pass the beam, there will be resonance or there will be electromagnetic wave that is produced, but the frequency and amplitude will be less. Yes. Now I will remove potassium and I will put manganese. What happens? Once again the force will be less, and once again the electromagnetic wave or the resonance will be produced, but the frequency is different. And now it is different from that electromagnetic wave that was produced when potassium was attached. So now what is the conclusion? When we attach different molecules, we will get different electromagnetic wave or we get different resonance. So this property of gold nanoparticle can be used to test the purity. So you put these gold nanoparticles in a solution and you check the frequency of the electromagnetic radiations that is produced after passing a beam to the solution. So if they are attached to different molecules, they will produce the electromagnetic signals of different frequencies and amplitudes. And now you apply the same for this cancer treatment. So you send gold nanoparticles into the body and these will get attached to different cells. So when the beam is passed, when the electromagnetic signals are different, it is akin that some of the cells, they are being acting differently. They have some different properties considered to normal cells. So those different cells can be considered as tumoric cells or the cancer cells. So this is how cancer can be detected, and it can be treated because by electrocution we can send heat through these gold nanoparticles. So when we send the heat, these gold nanoparticles will burn those cancerous cells and it will treat cancer. Then targeted drug delivery. So friends, if we attach the drug to these gold nanoparticles with the help of the molecular glues or the gums, and if we send it to the human body, then they will deliver to the exact targets. So this is how for the targeted drug delivery the gold nanoparticles are used. And then coming to solar cells. Friends, compared to the macro gold particles, these nano gold particles, they will be having more surface area. You will agree with me? And because of more surface area, they can accept more sunlight and they can conduct more electricity. So because of this property, if we embed the solar cells with the gold nanoparticles, then the efficiency of the solar cells will automatically be more. And then come to last one, NOMFETs. So NOMFETs, what are they? They are nanoparticle organic memory field effect transistors. So they are field effect transistors. In the lower class, we have studied that we have two types of transistors, that is the PNP and the NPN transistor. Now we will prepare a PNP transistor using gold nanoparticle. So now how to prepare a PNP transistor? That is, if you have two p-doped junction with one n-doped junction in the middle, then it is a PNP transistor. Now how to prepare a field effect transistor? So if we have a n big channel and if we have two small p channels, we have PNP, field effect transistor. So voltage is given here, and when the voltage is given, this junction will move further and this will hinder the electricity passing through it. So this is a field effect transistor. Now how to prepare this via gold nanoparticles? Friends, manganese oxide is usually used to prepare these NOMFETs. So manganese oxide is porous in nature. So it is this way. So now I will bring one gold nanoparticle and place it here. Yes friends, now manganese oxide has so much of positive ions. So positive ions will be accumulated here. So the outermost electrons of gold nanoparticle, they will get attracted to these positive ions and they get deposited here. So now this is P, this is N junction. You agree with me? And then because the electrons they accumulated here, the holes present on the surface of gold nanoparticles, they get accumulated on the opposite side. So we can see the positive here, negative here. The same way happens when these gold nanoparticles are embedded to manganese oxide. So now what we have? We have a P-N-P junction. Yes friends. So now if you provide voltage for these two, you have a field effect transistor. So that is why it is a nanoparticle field effect transistor. So why it is called organic memory field effect transistor is that the memory of this field effect transistor is stored via organic memory or might be the living cell like thing. So totally it is nanoparticle made organic memory field effect transistor. So do not by heart, I have explained sufficiently for NOMFET. Now coming to next. Robotic surgery. Why was it in news? Because recently Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India IRDAI, it allowed insurers to cover robotic and bariatric surgeries. So now it is not only that you will be having insurance for the man-made surgeries, even for the robotic surgeries you will be getting insurances. In this context, robotic surgeries or the robotics will become important. So now what are the benefits of robotic surgery, friends? Easy procedures. So when these robots, when they take up intricate surgical jobs, then doctors can only do the macro jobs and they can finish the job easily. And then increases flexibility, precision and control. So these robotics, they can be controlled to the minute extent and surgery can be done with utmost precision. And then it can reduce trauma. So as these robots, they have utmost control over their actions, the incisions or the cuts or destructions will be minimized. So trauma will also be minimized. And then reduced recovery time. So when the wounds and incisions are less, recovery will be easily done. Then less pain and blood loss. As the incisions are less, there will automatically be less pain and blood loss. And automatically there will be smaller and less noticeable wound scars of the operation. So these are the benefits of robotic surgery. Then coming to some of the applications of robotics. So where are the robotics applied? Friends, universally robotics are being applied to almost all the sectors of this world. Industrial sector, pickup, drop, surveillance, inspection and other things. Then aerospace, starting from maintenance of airports to the unmanned robotic spacecraft. Even robotics can do piloting as well. And outer space, we have heard of landers, rovers, and robotic satellites, etc. Then exploration. Robots can go beneath the earth and they can explore good minerals. And healthcare delivery. Just now we saw how robotics can perform surgeries. So in all these cases, robotic surgeries or the robots are applicable. Now coming to next. Silver antimony telluride. Why was it in use? Because researchers have found a new material called silver antimony telluride that can help in tapping the waste heat produced in domestic and industrial appliances. So how to harness this waste heat? It is via thermoelectric effect. So we will take up some of the facts of silver antimony telluride and then we will discuss what is thermoelectric effect. Silver antimony telluride is a nanomaterial compound synthesized from silver, antimony and tellurium. So the nano elements of silver, antimony and tellurium are being taken up in order to form this compound, and it is a crystalline solid. So it is not a metal, it is a salt and it is a crystal. Then it has free electrons that help in conduction of electricity, but its arrangement of atoms are very rigid. So we will take this fact for the later discussion. Then they vibrate quite slowly, thereby inhibiting the propagation of heat. Yes friends, now it is a good conductor of electricity but a bad conductor of heat, and this property of good conductor of electricity and a bad conductor of heat is most important for thermoelectric effect. So now what is thermoelectric effect, friends? It is that now you take a silver metal or a silver strip and heat it on one side. So now what happens is that silver has various free electrons, and these free electrons they start vibrating at this end. So when they start vibrating, they hit one another, and when the heat is intensified, the heating increases, and as a result the electrons they start mobilizing towards the colder end. So after some time what happens is that most of the electrons will be accumulated in the colder end, and in the hotter end there will be only less number of electrons remaining. So now what happens is that due to increase in number of electrons in one end and decrease in number of electrons in the other end, a potential difference will be created. So if we connect these two, we can harness electricity from this. So this is all about thermoelectric effect. But the negativity is that this is a silver metal. So when you start heating this part of strip, then the heat will automatically propagate to the other part as well. So after some time the whole strip will be heated and the difference in electrons will not take place at all. It is only up to some amount of time until the heat passes there. But take this silver antimony telluride. So it is a bad conductor of heat, we know that. So if we provide heat at this part, only this part will be heated. And now it has a free electrons as it is a good conductor of electricity. And these free electrons they vibrate and they will be displaced to the other part. And now as they are being displaced to the other part, as the atoms are very rigidly placed, so these displaced atoms they will not come back soon, so they will remain for some part of time there, and hence this potential difference can sustain for longer time, and we can completely harness this potential difference via electricity. So that is how silver antimony telluride, by being a bad conductor of heat and a good conductor of electricity, is being the best element or the best substance for harnessing the thermoelectric effect. So this is all about silver antimony telluride. Peatlands. Why was it in use, friends? Because as per a recent study, peatlands being rich in biodiversity include many potential vertebrate and invertebrate vectors or carriers of diseases. So recently it was found that peatlands do carry some of the vectors which carry diseases. Yes friends, now in this context peatlands will become important. So some of the facts about peatlands are they are the mixture of plant material accumulated in a water saturated area. So these plant materials should be wetted by the water and then partially decomposed due to absence of oxygen. So decomposition should be there, but it should be partial. Then peatlands cover 3% of global land surface. So this fact we will remember, and then they are the largest natural terrestrial carbon store. So how they store carbon? So if we burn those plant material instead, it will emit intense greenhouse gases like methane and carbon dioxide. Instead, let them be decomposing there. So that is how they act as carbon stores. And now, where are these peatlands found? They are found in the permafrosts of temperate region, and they are found in the poleward regions, and they are found in high altitudes. So friends, in all these areas the decomposition is incomplete because of lack of ambient temperature. And then in the coastal areas, and then beneath the tropical rainforests, and beneath the boreal forests. So here as well decomposition is incomplete because of lack of oxygen. Yes friends, so these are the areas where peatlands are found. Then come to next. Importance of peatland. Friends, peatland act as natural fire breaks between sections of forests. So if there are two sections of dry forest, if there is a peatland in between, then the fire will not cross from one section to other because they will be doused in the wet part of these peatlands. Then peatlands are critical for preserving global biodiversity. We know that peatlands will sustain so much of biodiversity, so hence they are global biodiversity hotspots. Then they provide safe drinking water. We know that peatlands, they have water resources and they will act as drinking water sources as well. And then peatlands will minimize flood risk and help address climate change. So we know that peatlands are the carbon stores, that is why they are acting as climate change inhibitors, and they minimize flood because if peatlands are present in the banks of the river, they can act as a barrier against flooding water. And then coming to disadvantages, if dry, they can turn into fire propagators. So these wet peatlands, if they go dry, they will be the first ones to catch the fire. Then damaged peatlands are a major source of greenhouse gas emission. So if there is intense decomposition or if there is intense burning of peatlands, they will also emit greenhouse gases. And this greenhouse gas can account to a 6% of global anthropogenic CO2 emission annually. So this can constitute to a whopping 6%, hence they can damage the environment. So this is all about peatlands. Nano-urea liquid of IFFCO. Friends, why was it in use? Because Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative Limited, they introduced the world's first nano-urea liquid. So nano-urea liquid is a replacement for urea. Friends, we know that the formula of urea is NH2CONH2. Yes friends. So now when this urea is applied to the field, what happens is that the plants and other microorganisms, they have to decay this urea and they have to release nitrogen, and these plants, they have to absorb the nitrogen. So instead of all these works, the nitrogen is directly supplied. And how this nitrogen is produced? It is produced via nanotechnology. Yes friends. So that is why the direct application of nano-urea liquid becomes important. So now more about nano-urea liquid. It is a nutrient liquid to provide nitrogen to plants. So nitrogen is directly supplied to the plants. Then it is developed to replace conventional urea. Yes, we saw this. And then it contains 40,000 micrograms per liter of nitrogen in a 500 ml bottle. So it might contain as it is being produced by nanotechnology. Then it is equivalent to the impact of nitrogen nutrient provided by one bag of conventional urea. So what a 50 kg of urea can do, the nitrogen bottle of urea liquid can do it in 500 ml. Then coming to next, the benefits of urea liquid. So conventional urea is effective only to 30 to 40% in delivering nitrogen to the plants, while effectiveness of nano urea liquid is over 80%. So 80% of the urea liquid is being used up by the plants, but when we supply urea, only 30 to 40% is being used. Remaining will be washed away with the irrigated water, or it will remain in the soils. Then an average 8% increase in yield has been witnessed after application of nano urea liquid. And then this nano urea liquid, they protect the plants from lodging effect. Friends, we know that once urea is applied to the soil, intense chemical reactions will occur. So in order to cool down that, intense water has to be provided. So just the way our body creates heat when we eat chicken and all, the same way soil produces heat. So when we provide intense water, these roots of the crops, they cannot hold the plant upright, and these plants, because of the flooding of water, they start sleeping towards the floor. So we can see how the crops have slept towards the floor. This is called lodging effect. But when you apply this urea liquid, you need not have to irrigate the field to so much of extent, as no chemical reactions will be occurring. So as a result, no lodging effect will take place. And then it protects underground water. So we know that only 30 to 40% of nitrogen will be utilized, and the rest of the urea will go and it will be washed away with the water. The same water will sink to the ground and it will contaminate groundwater. And then it curbs GHG emission. Friends, we know that we have discussed in the earlier slide that in order to break down the urea, intense methane and carbon dioxide is produced. So when you are not providing urea, all these emissions will be cut out. So in this way, there are various benefits for nano urea liquid. So this is all about nano urea liquid and its applications. Coming to next, nanomyceles. Why was it in news, friends? Because a team of scientists has created a nanomycele that can be used for effective drug delivery to treat various cancers, including breast, colon and lung cancers. So friends, what is a nanomycele? Before that, what is a mycele? Friends, in the lower class, we have studied that when soap or a detergent, when it is put in the water, the molecules of soap will be arranged likewise. That is, the hydrophilic part will be arranged in one part and the hydrophobic part will be left to the outer directions. So we can say that this is one mycele of soap or a detergent. The same way, nanoparticles, they also get arranged in a colloidal solution. So they can form spherical myceles as shown here. They can form lamellar myceles or the sheet-shaped myceles, and they can also form cylindrical myceles. So this is all about nanomycele. So we will see how they will treat the cancer patients. So they are an aggregate of molecules in a colloidal solution. We discussed it, and they are amphiphilic in nature. They have hydrophilic outer shell and hydrophobic interior core. The hydrophilic shell makes mycele water soluble, and hydrophobic core carries a payload of a drug. And then once injected intravenously, they easily escape the circulation through the leaky blood vessels and reach the tumors. So how they treat cancer? When we inject a mycele into the intravenous or into the veins, then they will escape through the leakages in the veins and they will directly reach the tumors. And when they reach the tumors, the outer hydrophilic part will be dissolved and the inner hydrophobic part will deliver the drug to the tumor. So this is how they treat cancer. So this is all about nanomyceles. Coming to next, nanobodies. Friends, why was it in news? Because an international research team has developed novel antibody fragments or nanobodies against SARS-CoV-19. And what was the findings of the experiment? It is that on injection of surface protein of the coronavirus into an aplaca or a llama, their immune system produced nanobodies. So these antigens of coronavirus, when they were injected into aplaca or llama, they produced nanobodies instead of producing antibodies. So now what are nanobodies? How they are different from antibodies? So conventional antibodies have two variable domains called VH and VL, and these offer each other stability and binding specificity. Then nanobodies have VHH domains and lack VL domains. Lacking the VL domain means nanobodies have a hydrophilic property. Hence, unlike antibodies, they do not have issues with the solubility. I am sure that no one has understood this. We will discuss in detail. Friends, here we have a typical antibody, that is a conventional immunoglobulin antibody, and they will be in Y shape. So almost all the mammals, they produce Y shaped antibodies. And here we can see the VH and VL component. These are the binding agents, and almost all these blue cells are stabilizing agents. And now, to the astonishment of the scientists, they found that some of the mammals, they can produce only the heavy chain only antibodies. So what are these heavy chain only antibodies? It is that the lighter chains of the antibodies are moved off and still the antibody is stable. So we need not have these longer chains. Even with the shorter chains, antibodies can survive. What are the advantages? Once again, with the lighter chain, antibody can move fastly and it can bind speedily. And now, with the controlled experiment, it was found that it is not only that the heavy chain only antibody can survive with utmost stability, even the VHH alone can survive with stableness. So the antibodies need not have any of the stabilizing chains. Only the binding component can exist independently. And this binding agent, which is capable of existing independently, is given the name of nanobodies. and it is very light in weight and it is also very mobile. So these are the nanobodies, and moreover it is said that these nanobodies they have hydrophilic properties. So why this is important? Because friends, when we provide excess of antibodies to a body, once the antibodies they tackle the pathogens, and after that they start eating the living cells or the normal cells of the humans. But now when these nanobodies are provided, and once these nanobodies are going in excess, so we can neutralize them as they can dissolve in the body fluids. So we have two advantages, that is lighter weight, more mobility, and also dissolution capacity in case of excess supply of antibodies. So these are the advantage of nanobodies. I hope you have understood now. We will move on to the next. Come to next, gravitational waves. Friends, we try to understand what is gravitational wave in this class. So for this I have taken displacement wave, electrical wave and gravitational wave as three assumptions. So we will begin with the displacement wave. So friends, imagine you are moving in a sea in a boat. So you are moving in a sea in a boat and a sea wave approaches you. So now when a sea wave approaches you, what happens? You will move up and come down. Am I right? So what happened? As the sea wave approached you, you will be displaced up and you will be displaced to the down to some extent. And then imagine an electric wave is passed to you. So what happens when an electric wave is passed to you? The voltage in your body will be surged to some extent and it will be brought down to some extent as the wave passes. Yes friends, so if your body cannot tolerate this voltage surge and voltage fall all of a sudden, you will die. Then coming to next, the gravitational wave. So now gravitational wave is a space-time wave. We know that. Now a space wave approaches you. So what happens when a space wave approaches you? What happens is that your body will expand and contract to some extent. So at the first time it will expand and then it will suddenly contract and then it will become normal. Now coming to time wave. What happens to the time wave? When the time wave approaches, same thing happens friends. That is, your time duration will first expand and then it will contract. Or in the first half, you will take longer time to spend the same 10 minutes and in the next half, you will take shorter time to spend the same 10 minutes. It may be absurd, but it is true that the time is a variable in the gravitational wave. So now we incurred both space and time wave. So what happens is that this is universe, the Big Bang, and this is space in x-axis and time in y-axis. So when a wave approaches, what happens is that in the universe will expand and contract and the time will also expand and contract. So what are the uses of this gravitational wave? So when there are so many gravitational waves that are going, we can assume that the time which we estimated that this was the time when Big Bang occurred may change because time is varying. So Big Bang might have occurred much before what we have thought, or Big Bang might have occurred much later what we have thought, and then the size of universe may be much larger than what we have thought, or it might be much smaller than what we have thought, or it might be varying day in and day out, which we could not recognize at all. So this is how gravitational waves they give great insights to the origin of universe and the knowledge thereof. Now how to detect a gravitational wave? Friends, the LIGO it provided a setup like this. So what was the setup? A laser beam was passed to two different arms. So this was arm A and arm B. We will take it as this, and here the same light waves they will pass to two different arms. So what happens in the arm? So in this arm the light wave passes, it gets reflected in the mirror, it comes back and it will converge here. And the same happens in the arm B. The electric wave moves, it gets reflected and it comes here. And when the arms are equal in length and when the laser light is passed in the same time at a time for both the arms, what happens? Even if they go there, reflect and come back, the waves will be in phase. We can see the waves in phase in this figure. But now imagine that in one of the arm the gravitational wave passes. So now as we discussed, both the time and space will vary. So this space will expand and contract, and the time of this space or this arm will expand and contract. So now what happens? The time taken for the wave to go there and come back has varied, and also that the distance for the wave to cover while going and coming back will also vary. So now what happens? As the time and distance has changed, now this wave is no longer in phase with the other wave or the wave that has traveled in the other arm. So this is how the gravitational wave can be detected. So if at all there is a small difference in the phases of these two waves, then it is an indication that there is a gravitational wave. Yes friends, so I hope you have understood this. Then come to the last part. Friends, science is one thing wherein you have to understand. So science is to understand and humanities is to memorize. But our paradox is that 90% of our engineers and doctors, they mug up, and no humanities students will mug up to that extent. So do not by heart science, read it, understand it, Google it, try to understand the nuances and try to have a knowledge of it. All the very best friends, good luck.